What is your area of expertise?
My area of expertise is school psychology. I am a school psychologist by training. The particular area of research that I do is family-school partnerships. I also do quite a bit of work in children's behavior and social skill development.
Talk to me about the TAP intervention. What is it that you and your colleagues are trying to address?
Teachers and Parents as Partners is an intervention that brings parents and teachers together to work as partners to help support the academic, social, behavioral, and emotional development of young children. In this intervention, we are very concerned about building relationships and connections between home and school. We know from the research and good practical experience that when parents and teachers work together as partners, children succeed. It sets them up for success in life. Now, in this particular intervention, in the TAP intervention, we tend to focus on students who are struggling, either because they have some academic challenges or social skill difficulties or other kinds of barriers that really influence their ability to achieve to their potential. In the TAP intervention, we bring parents and teachers together to help support those students who are struggling. We help them identify strengths in the child, first and foremost, because all students bring some really assets to the table. But then we also identify challenges or goals that we want to help students achieve. Through the process, we target these particular goals. We help parents and teachers co-create meaningful, practical, effective strategies that they can use at home and at school. And we help them learn ways to monitor the progress of the student so they can always assess how the student is doing in terms of progress toward that goal. It's really a process that is set up to help a student succeed. We don't stop until the student meets those goals, and we make sure that there are plans in place to continue not only the student's academic, social, or behavioral success, but also to continue that partnership.
What age would this program be geared towards?
The primary focus of the TAP intervention historically has been in early childhood through about third grade. Now, some of our research currently is working with students up through the fifth grade, and there have been a few studies that have looked at middle school involvement. But the majority of the data that show the real benefit of TAP has been with students between, say, kindergarten and about third to fifth grade.
Why is that teacher-parent involvement partnership is so important in early education versus later on in middle school and high school?
Positive relationships between parents and teachers and partnerships between parents and teachers is important at any stage in a child's development, at any age or grade in a child's educational trajectory. But starting early is key for a number of reasons. First, because the TAP intervention is focused on setting up a student for success, the sooner and earlier we can do that, the better their lifelong trajectory. So if we can teach them skills early and help them develop better habits, whether they be academic habits or behavioral habits, it's going to help them basically get along much more effectively and use those skills and use those strategies throughout life. It's also important that we begin fostering this positive relationship between parents and teachers early on in a child's educational trajectory. We want parents to recognize early and for the long haul that they matter. They matter deeply in a child's learning, in a child's overall development. And we want parents to understand that their insights and their input, their observations, their expertise, they are experts on their child. We want them to understand early that that's all really important for helping their students succeed in school and in life. And the sooner and earlier we can help parents embrace that and really understand and acknowledge that they matter, the better that whole educational experience will be for the student. And teachers as well. Early on, the pre-kindergarten teachers, the kindergarten teachers, the early primary grade teachers, they want the same thing that parents want. They want children to learn and achieve to the best of their potential. So we want these teachers to also know that they can rely on parents to help support that shared goal. And that early stimulation, that early opportunity, that ongoing support, that support net that provides for a student is the kind of thing that's really going to help them through all the ebbs and flows, all the successes and challenges that they'll be experiencing in school.
How difficult is it to get parents to keep with the TAP program?
Parents are very busy. Parents have a lot on their plates. Parents have a lot of objectives, not only around their children's learning, but other aspects of the family environment that they have to be that they have to prioritize. It is important, though, that we think about parent engagement in their child's learning not as another thing that they have to do, but a mindset. It's an attitude. It's an approach to parenting. So being engaged in your child's learning and engaged in your child's educational experiences really needs to become part of the fabric of natural family practices. The TAP intervention is an intervention that does ask parents to spend time meeting with teachers, to talk about things, the dreams they have for their child, the goals they have for their child, and to then help support that child through engaging in certain plans and practices at home. But those become habits, and those become the kinds of things that matter in terms of having a very positive home environment as well. So the time that's invested in the meetings and the planning and the follow-through of those plans and strategies at home begin to make the home life and the behaviors and the routines at home much easier. So that early investment in time really does help save lots and lots of time when it comes to the kinds of challenges that students might be experiencing.
Talk to me about the study with the TAP program.
We've been conducting research with TAP for many years, and we have found repeatedly a few primary things that we believe are the most important messages. First and foremost, our research has found convincingly that the family-school partnership that is formed when TAP is implemented and parents and teachers come together and go through this process of working together and collaborating to support the student sets a child up for success in life. Our data are very clear in the kinds of outcomes that we are seeing with academic skills, organizational skills, time on task, better homework practices, better homework completion and accuracy. These academic skill sets are so important to instill in a child early on, and this intervention really helps establish those. Certain studies have focused on social, behavioral, and emotional kinds of challenges that some children experience early on. And our research finds time and time again that the TAP intervention is very effective for helping students develop better coping skills and social skills. It helps them adapt better to a range of situations and demands. And the results last. I mean, the outcomes persist over time. Our research is finding that this investment of about 8 to 10 weeks where parents and teachers are working intently together, those gains persist at least a year out. So the following school year also goes better for students around academic, behavioral, and social outcomes and social skills. So that's exciting, but it doesn't stop there. Our research is also showing that parents and teachers also benefit significantly from this process. Their partnership, their ability to work together, their collaboration, their relationship also improves as a function of TAP. Teachers become better teachers. We find that teachers are using better strategies in their classrooms, they're developing better relationships with their students, they are becoming good problem solvers. They're learning ways to look at situations and develop solutions independently of this process as they continue to use the skills that they've learned through TAP. And those strategies also persist. Another exciting thing is that we're seeing great outcomes for parents. When parents work collaboratively with teachers through this TAP process, they become better parents. They learn strategies and positive parenting skills that they can use at home, not only with the child who's the focus of TAP, but with all of their children. And they tell us that it really does make the home environment much calmer and happier. And that's something we all want. Parents become better problem solvers. They communicate more effectively with their child's teachers as well as with their own children. A study that we have ongoing right now is with Latinx parents, and we're finding in those situations great effects in terms of the parents' ability to communicate with their child's educators, which is such a barrier for some of these families who don't speak English as a first language. It's also removing barriers for those parents to be engaged in their children's schooling, which is such a positive thing because they don't always know how to navigate these school systems that do create some challenges for them. And the quality of the interactions, the quality of the relationship that they're reporting with their children's teachers is much enhanced. So not only for our typical parents, but parents of all backgrounds, all language backgrounds, we're seeing benefits not only in terms of how it improves things that are happening in their home, but also things that are happening in terms of their ability to engage more effectively with schools.
For parents that have the language barrier, when it comes to interacting with the teacher, what kind of things do you guys do with the TAP program that allows them to be able to communicate?
When parents don't speak English and we are engaging in this very collaborative process, we do whatever we have to do to ensure that they are fully engaged as partners. The first and foremost thing that is important is to ensure that they can communicate in a two-way dialogue. And in that regard, we do bring in interpreters who work as a bridge between the parent and the teacher. What's important in those situations is not that we've strengthened the relationship between the parent and the interpreter, but that we really focus still on that parent and teacher. So our interpreters are very highly trained individuals who know what we're trying to accomplish in terms of building that partnership, who understand the importance of the relationship that's being formed between the parent and the teacher, and who can also facilitate that in the manner in which they are in providing this interpretation. We ensure that all of the ongoing communications between home and school are in the primary language that the parent prefers. We always ask the parent first, what do you prefer? What is your intent here? And we honor that. And whether it's home notes or sometimes text messaging or even little videos that a teacher might send home to show how wonderful the child is performing that particular day, we use sometimes electronic and digital means. We can exploit technology these days to make it very possible for parents and teachers to stay connected in ways that parents and teachers both really understand.
For parents, what tips would you provide them to get that conversation started with their child's teacher?
My recommendations really revolve around what I call the 3 C's. The first C is communication. And I highly recommend that both parents and teachers reach out to one another early on in the school year and talk with one another about ways that they can most effectively communicate. It doesn't have to be meetings on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be phone calls on a regular basis. Whatever means works for that parent and teacher pair, that parent and teacher duo, is what should be encouraged and promoted. And we see many teachers and parents using all kinds of creative ways to stay in touch with one another. Homeschool notes, maybe going back once a week, text messaging, of course, but also little video clips or phone calls or even notes on a homework sheet, little sentences. Jacob had a great day today, or Amelia's really working hard. The key is two-way communication, though. And it's not just communication that comes from school to home, which is important, but also the communication that parents share with their child's teacher. So parents know their child the best. They see them for the majority of their time outside of school, and they can share with the teacher tips and tidbits about what seems to be helping that child either have a better mood or behave more effectively or manage their emotions. They can share with the teacher any things that might have happened at home that could influence their behavior at school. They can talk about how the child is approaching homework or how they're getting along with their peers outside of school, because all of this information helps the teacher know the child better. And that relationship that the teacher has with the student is also so important to effective teaching and learning. So that's the first C, is communication. The second is collaboration. And by collaboration, I mean working together, co-creating meaningful ways to support a student. All parents and teachers want what's best for the child. And through a collaborative process, through a collaborative partnership, we can come up with simple strategies at home and at school so that parents and teachers know that they're working together to support the child's learning and behavior. And collaboration means that there is a willingness to share the responsibility for the child's learning and for the child's success. And it's outward, it's outright. We acknowledge as a parent and we acknowledge as a teacher that we're in this together. We're on the same page, and we're going to make sure that we do whatever we can do to support the student. Of course, this is most important for students who are struggling, who have certain challenges to learning or behavioral issues, but it's really important for all students. The third C is consistency. Create consistency between home and school. What I mean by this is not that that home becomes the school environment or that school becomes the home, but that there's a bridge between home and school, and there's common messages, and there's some opportunities for learning and growing in both settings. The more easily children can kind of go back and forth between home and school, the easier it will be for them to focus on what's important. And when we create consistencies at home and at school, children have that ability to navigate more easily and more effectively. One of the primary findings that we are seeing not only in our TAP intervention research, but in other family school partnership research that we've been conducting here at Nebraska for many years, is that what happens at home, the home environment for learning, is one of the best predictors for the child's long-term success. And what I mean by this is the routines, the habits, the learning opportunities, the support for learning, the messages about the importance of schooling, all these things that parents do at home early on and over the long term make a huge difference for how the child will ultimately get through school and set themselves up for success in life. So that consistency includes the messaging that happens at home and the kinds of things that parents do at home to support their child as a learner in a very positive, sort of, nurturing way. The third C, consistency, also means that parents continue to be engaged over the long haul. So it's not just one year or with one teacher or with one circumstance where the child might be struggling, but they recognize that it might look different, it might change from preschool to third grade to junior high school and beyond, but still parents have a consistent engagement in their child's life, in their child's learning, and in their child's success. So that's a really important message as well. We're finding that sustained connection with their child's education, with their child's schooling, makes a big difference in having some stability for the child. And that's something that's really important as well.
What tips would you give to teachers so that way they can build that effective teacher-parent partnership?
There's a number of things that teachers can do to support the partnership with parents. First and foremost, start early and send positive messages to parents. It is the case that oftentimes when a parent receives a phone call or a message from the teacher, they have this oh no kind of reaction, because oftentimes it means that there's something wrong or the child has misbehaved or that there's a problem to be solved. And when you start in a relationship in a crisis mode or in a problematic kind of role, it makes it very hard to sort of shift from some adversarial kind of feelings to a positive, cooperative relationship. So let's start by sending home positive messages, good news phone calls, the kinds of communications that parents love getting about their child. Parents love their children more than anything in the world and are personally attached and connected. So getting a message about just some simple things like the child did a really nice thing for a peer today, or I loved how funny he is, or I can tell that you're working really hard with Johnny because I'm seeing some real benefit. Those positive messages feel good to a parent, and that's a good place to be. Then you can get into situations where you might have to do some problem solving from a very different place. So the first message I'd have is start early, and don't be afraid to send positive messages, positive vibes to a parent, because that helps validate them as well. A second thing that I would suggest with teachers is to listen. To listen. So when you reach out to communicate, you reach out to early, listen to what parents have to say. Parents have dreams for their child. Parents have visions of their child, going places, doing things, succeeding in certain ways. And it's important to know what those goals are. And then together, sort of adjust some of the anticipations or the expectations in ways that are reasonable and practical, and that you can together sort of help set that child off on. So communication includes sharing information, it includes good, messages going home. It includes the ability then to share information that might be more challenging, but it also includes listening to parents' perspectives, listening to parents' ideas, thinking about ways that you can embrace that as you're also working with that student in your classroom, because that then creates that consistency that's so important.
How can teachers build that effective partnership with each one of those parents? Parents only have to worry about like 1 or 2 kids versus 20 or 30.
Teachers can create an environment in their classroom, in fact, a classroom culture of inclusiveness, of invitation, of availability and access. The important thing is that early on, teachers do reach out to all parents, and it doesn't have to be individual, one by one, but that early communication in the school year, letting parents know that they have a priority in doing what's best for their student, and they know that parents have that same priority, so that they want to work together as partners. Not all parents, not all students will need the same things. And so for some families, those early communications, those gestures of inviting parents to connect with them, when they have questions, or be open to, communications that might come home, that's all they need. And they can more easily and readily sort of connect in ways that are going to be important for their student. Other students and other families will need different things and need more or unique ways of reaching out and communicating and then establishing the partnership. Some will need a little bit of effort, some will need a little more effort. The key is for a teacher to really get to know your students and to recognize when more effort will be necessary. And in the TAP intervention, we engage in a lot of monitoring of how the student is doing. And if we can start that process early, if we start really observing students, their behaviors, their social skills, their academic performance, then we can pinpoint early on when more intervention is needed. And so as teachers get to know their students and they see some areas where some students are going to need more assistance, they can reach out early.
Is there anything that teachers didn't learn when they're going through the process that maybe they should learn now later on after they kind of did that initial stage?
In the TAP intervention, a specialist is involved in helping the parent and teacher create not only that bridge between home and school, but also learn strategies to help students be more successful and really co-create these strategies that can be used at home and at school. And sometimes it's the case that certain strategies work really well and they can be used with lots of students. But a lot of times, strategies will need to be tailored to individual circumstances. And at times, parents and teachers will need more help with that they will need to understand when to sort of deviate a little bit because the student isn't meeting his or her goals, or try a different approach with another student because their circumstances are very unique. And ideally, they learn how to pivot pretty readily through the process, but they may need more support. And so the specialist that's involved in the TAP intervention doesn't just go away. They continue to check in, now not as regularly and frequently, but they'll continue to check in with the teacher and the parent to make sure things are still going with a student, but also to provide support for other circumstances, other situations that might also need some effort. It is important that teachers and parents really do develop this skill set of knowing how to observe students, understanding what behaviors might be communicating, looking at different approaches and strategies to target those behaviors, and then monitoring how the student is doing. That problem-solving approach is something that can and does generalize to all kinds of situations for parents and teachers. But we're all human. And additional help and additional support is never a bad thing. And so we really do try to be there as much as possible to sort of bolster some of that early learning and refine it in ways that helps them even do more on their own in the future.
How long are these kids typically followed after they take part in the TAP intervention?
We follow students for 1 year after the involvement in the TAP intervention as normal course of our research studies. Now we are just finishing a study where we have monitored children into adolescence, so many years later. We're just in the process of analyzing those data. It's a separate study that we're very excited about, and we're finding that in many areas, the skills that students have learned around behavior management and social skills have maintained several years into adolescence. This is in comparison to students who had some of the same behavior challenges but didn't have the benefit of the parent-teacher partnership or the TAP intervention. So that's important because our research is very rigorous, and it's looking at not only how students are performing in terms of their involvement in the TAP intervention, but it's in comparison to very similar students who aren't getting that partnership, who aren't receiving the TAP intervention. And then as we track them over time, well into middle school, we're seeing those differences still exist. So it adds a lot of credibility to the importance of partnerships, not only in the immediate sense, but over time and as children sort of continue to advance toward maturity and in life.
What would you want policymakers to know about the TAP program?
Policymakers are in a very unique and important position to set the stage for ensuring that what's most important for students' learning is what's happening in our schools. And we know consistently now, over many years of research with the TAP intervention and other family school partnership intervention, that one of the better predictors, one of the most important things for a long-term lifetime of success for students is for the primary adults to work together and create this support net and to help them be successful. So from a policy perspective, I believe very much that programs need to be in place and it needs to become part of the fabric of a school that parents and teachers are going to work together. And it doesn't have to be, big, expensive programs, but just the daily practices, just the typical messaging that can go home, the typical messaging that can go from home to school. These kinds of programmatic changes really do need to take place. And when students are struggling, we need to instill in our educational systems programs that are going to bring parents into the solution at a much earlier stage. So from a policy perspective, I believe very much that programs where parents and teachers are connected as partners and there's resources available to create these kinds of supports for students is the best opportunity for long-term success.
Anything I didn't ask you that you feel that people should know?
One of the very interesting and unique findings of our research is that the relationship between parents and teachers matter. So we talk a lot about partnerships, but as you kind of unpack a partnership, what it really looks like on a daily basis is parents and teachers working together in the context of a very strong, positive relationship. In fact, when we look at our data, it is the relationship between parents and teachers that really drives some of our outcomes. So the partnership is established through the TAP intervention, but it's the relationship between parents and teachers that is most predictive of our outcomes. Relationships matter. Relationships between parents and teachers are really at the core of the success of partnership programs. And the more we can understand that parents and teachers are always in a relationship with one another, the best we can do is really try to foster a very healthy and positive relationship, the better we will see outcomes for students.